What would you say if a cop looked at you and asked, "So, why were you speeding right now?" If your answer starts with, "I was only," you might give away your case before the stop even begins. One tiny excuse can sound like a full confession. Hit subscribe right now because what you're about to hear is the kind of script you won't remember unless you save it before a real stop. Like this video too, because when your heart is racing on the side of the road, you need simple words, not panic. Here's what you're about to learn. The first sentence you should use when an officer wants you to explain yourself. The exact line that shuts down phishing questions without making you look hostile. The one sentence that protects your car from a consent search. And the question that helps you know when your stop should be over. Most people have no idea how fast a normal stop can turn into something much bigger. You think you're being polite. You think you're clearing things up. But your own words can build the whole case against you. Here's the reality. A traffic stop is not a friendly chat. It feels casual, but every answer matters. Let me show you exactly how smart drivers stay calm, protect themselves, and get through the stop without helping the officer do more than the law allows. Now let's talk about the mistake almost everyone makes. You get pulled over, your heart jumps, you already feel guilty even if you did nothing serious. So the second the officer says, "Do you know why I stopped you?" you start talking. "I was only going a little over. I was only checking my phone. I was only trying to get home." That sounds harmless to you. But to the officer, that can sound like an admission. And once you start explaining, you usually keep explaining. Then the questions get wider. Where are you coming from? Have you been drinking? Is there anything in the car I should know about? Listen closely because this is critical. The stop often gets worse because you tried to talk your way out of it. Your mouth does more damage than the ticket ever would. The first thing you need to stop doing is answering guilt questions with your own confession. If the officer says, "Do you know why I stopped you?" you do not help fill in the blanks. You do not say, "I was only going 5 over." You do not say, "I was only keeping up with traffic." You do not say, "I was only on my phone for a second." You keep it clean and simple. Here's exactly what you say. "No, officer. What is the reason for the stop?" Word for word. Memorize that line. That answer works because it does two things for you. First, it stays polite. You are not arguing. You are not being rude. Second, it makes the officer say the reason out loud instead of getting a free statement from you. That matters more than you think. If the officer says you were speeding, let the officer say it. Don't say it for them. If the officer says you crossed the line, let the officer say it. Don't confirm it for them. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I was only going a little fast because everyone else was speeding." Then the officer hears an admission before the ticket is even written. Good way. Smart drivers say, "No, officer, what is the reason for the stop?" Then the officer has to explain the stop without getting extra help from your own mouth. Watch what happens when you use the right line. The stop stays narrow. The officer now has the reason for the stop and you have not added anything. That gives you room. That gives you control. That keeps you from turning a small stop into a bigger investigation. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In Berkemer versus McCarty, the court said normal roadside questioning during a traffic stop usually does not count as full custody. In plain English, that means officers can ask you questions without reading you your rights first. So if you start confessing because you think, "They didn't read me Miranda, so this doesn't count," you are making a huge mistake. Your words can still be used. Here's the reality. Officers ask open questions because open questions get people talking. And once you start trying to sound innocent, you often say the exact thing that sounds guilty. "I was only tired. I was only looking down for 1 second. I was only coming from my friend's place after 1 beer. Those are not magic words. Those are gifts. Let me show you exactly how simple this can be. The officer walks up. You hand over your documents when asked. The officer says, "Do you know why I stopped you?" You say, "No, officer." "What is the reason for the stop?" Then you stop. You do not fill the silence. You do not smile and confess. You do not add extra details to seem helpful. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it keeps the stop from turning into a long story session. Short answers protect you. Long stories expose you. Have you ever been asked that exact question during a stop? Drop a comment below and tell me what you said, because once you hear the next tactic, you'll never answer it the same way again. Now let's deal with the moment officers start fishing. This is where they stop asking about the lane change or the tail light and start asking about your life. Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? Have you had anything to drink tonight? Is there anything illegal in the car? Are you on probation? Those questions feel random, but they are not random. They are designed to get you talking, slipping, and giving the officer something new to work with. Your second tactic is to stop giving a story and clearly invoke your silence. You look at the officer and say this, "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." Those exact words. Keep them calm. Keep them short. This is 100% legal, and it matters that you say it clearly. Salinas v. Texas is a big reason why. That case basically says staying quiet by itself is not always enough. In plain English, if you just stare at the officer and say nothing, that may not protect you the same way as clearly saying you are using your right to remain silent. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it is direct, clean, and hard to twist. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I was only at my cousin's house," or "I only had one drink," or "There's nothing in the car. You can check if you want." Then the officer gets new facts, new suspicion, and a reason to keep digging. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." Then the officer loses the easy path to more evidence from your own words. Now be smart here. You still follow lawful orders. You still give your license, registration, and proof of insurance when required. You do not fight. You do not reach around fast. You do not act tough. You simply stop answering investigative questions. That's the difference. You are not resisting. You are protecting yourself, and yes, your tone matters. Don't say it like you're trying to win a movie scene. Say it like you are calm and sure. "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." Then stop talking. If the officer repeats the question, you repeat the line. If the officer changes the wording, you repeat the line. If the officer acts offended, you repeat the line. Short, polite, done. Watch what happens when you do this right. The stop becomes boring, and boring is good for you. The officer may still write a ticket. Fine. A ticket is not the same as building a bigger case. The danger is not always the original reason for the stop. The danger is what you volunteer after it starts. This also comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. Berkmer tells you traffic stop questions can happen without Miranda. Salinas tells you silence should be clearly invoked if you want that protection. Put those two together and the lesson is simple. If you keep chatting, you can hurt yourself. If you clearly invoke your right, you stop feeding the stop. Still watching? Good. Drop a like if this is already changing how you think about every traffic stop you've ever had. Now, let's talk about the question that traps innocent people every day. Mind if I take a quick look in your car? That one gets people because it sounds casual, it sounds tiny, it sounds like if you say yes, you'll look cooperative and get out faster. But that is not how real life works. Once you agree to a search, you lose a huge layer of protection. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches," word for word. Memorize that line. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection because consent changes everything. If you say yes, the officer may not need to fight over whether the search was proper. Your yes can do the work for them. That is why this line matters so much. It keeps the burden where it belongs, on them, not on you. Bad way. Most drivers say, I guess so, I've got nothing to hide." Then the officer gets full access and anything found becomes your problem. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then the officer has to rely on actual legal grounds instead of your permission. This is 100% legal, and it does not make you look guilty. People always say, "But won't I look suspicious if I refuse?" Maybe. But looking suspicious is not the same thing as waiving your rights. You are allowed to say no. In fact, Schneckloth v. Bustamante shows why this matters so much. That case says a consent search can be valid if your consent was voluntary. In plain English, if you say yes, even casually, that yes can count. That's why your words must be clear. Now let me make this simple for you. You do not argue about the Constitution on the roadside. You do not give a speech. You do not lecture the officer. You say the line. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." If they search anyway, you do not physically resist. You do not grab the door. You do not pull away. You stay calm, and you let your lawyer fight the search later. Here's where drivers destroy themselves. They think being nice means saying yes to everything. No. Being calm is good. Being respectful is good. Giving away your protection is not good. There is a huge difference. And there is another trap. The officer may ask in a softer way. "You don't mind if I just take a quick peek, right?" Or, "If you've got nothing to hide, we're good." That is still a search request. Your answer stays the same. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Same words, same tone, same stop. Most people have no idea how many cases start because a driver talked too much and then consented to a search they did not have to allow. That one decision can change your whole night or your whole life. 90% of drivers don't know what's coming next. Stay with me, because this next tactic is the one that stops a simple traffic stop from stretching into a roadside fishing trip. Your fourth tactic is the question that tells you whether the stop should still be happening. Once the officer has your documents, runs them, and writes the warning or ticket, the mission of the stop is supposed to be ending. If the officer keeps hanging around asking extra stuff, you need to know how to respond. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, am I free to leave? Those 5 words are powerful. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. That question forces the moment into the open. If the answer is yes, you leave calmly. If the answer is no, then the officer is saying you are still being detained, and that matters later. Rodriguez v. United States says police cannot extend a traffic stop longer than needed for its original job, unless they have legal reason to do that. In plain English, they don't get extra time just to fish around. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Sure, I can wait," or "I was only trying to help," and then keep chatting beside the car. Then the stop gets longer, and the officer gets more chances to build suspicion. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, am I free to leave?" Then the officer has to either end the stop or make clear that the detention is continuing. Now, quick warning for you. If the officer orders you out of the car, you comply. Pennsylvania v. Mims says officers can order a driver out during a lawful traffic stop. So do not turn that into a roadside debate. Step out if ordered, keep your hands visible, and keep your words tight. Former police officers have confirmed this works because calm compliance lowers tension while still protecting your rights. You can step out and still not answer questions. You can comply and still refuse consent. You can stand outside the car and still ask, "Officer, am I free to leave?" That is the balance you want. Calm body, clear words, no extra story. Let's lock the law in your head in plain English. Berkham v. McCarty means your traffic stop is still serious even if nobody read you your rights yet, so you should never assume your roadside confession is harmless. Schneckloth v. Bustamante means consent matters a lot. If you say yes to a search, that yes can make the search legal even when you did not have to agree. Rodriguez v. United States means a traffic stop is supposed to stay tied to the reason for the stop, not drift into a random investigation with no limit, and that is why your 4 lines work together. You do not confess. You clearly invoke silence. You refuse consent to search. And you ask if you are free to leave when the stop should be over. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. Your state may have extra rules on small details, but the big lesson stays the same. Your words matter. Your silence matters. Your consent matters. Consent. Now let me show you exactly how this plays out in real life. You're driving home at night. You get pulled over for drifting a little near the line. The officer walks up and says, "Do you know why I stopped you?" The wrong way starts right there. You say, "Yeah, I was only checking my phone for 1 second. Now you just admitted distraction." Then the officer asks, "Where are you coming from?" You say, "I was only leaving a bar, but I only had 1 drink." Now you just handed over alcohol information too. Then the officer says, "Mind if I take a quick look in the car?" You say, "Sure, I've got nothing to hide." Now the doors are open, the stop is longer, and your night is off the rails. Watch what happens when you do it the smart way. The officer asks, "Do you know why I stopped you?" You say, "No, officer. What is the reason for the stop?" The officer says you touched the line. He asks where you're coming from. You say, "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." He asks again in a softer voice. You repeat it. He asks to search the car. You say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." He tells you to step out. You step out calmly because he can order that. Then he keeps talking after handing back your documents. You ask, "Officer, am I free to leave?" See the difference. In the first version, you built the case with your own mouth. In the second version, you stayed polite, followed lawful orders, and gave up nothing extra. That is how you protect yourself. Short answers. No story, no consent, no panic. Next video, I'm revealing what to say when cops claim they smell weed. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that one gets drivers talking themselves into searches every single day. So let's lock this in one last time. If an officer asks why you were stopped, you do not say, "I was only anything." You make the officer give the reason. If the questions turn into fishing, you clearly say you are invoking your right to remain silent. If they ask to search, you say you do not consent. And if the stop seems over but the questions keep going, you ask if you are free to leave. That is real power for you. Not yelling, not arguing, not acting tough, just using the right words at the right time. Hit subscribe so you catch that next video on smell-based searches. Smash the like button if this script just saved you from making a costly mistake. And drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay calm, stay smart, stay safe out there.